Well, hello there, and welcome to Strong, Courageous Men. I am your host, Caleb Effinger, and I have the joy of interviewing wise, godly men on a variety of topics. These conversations are intended to encourage us to be strong, courageous men, humbly living for the glory of Christ as we run this race toward heaven. Well, welcome to the show. Today is special. Today, we are kicking off with a new format for the show where we tell stories of strength and courage. These are men who are applying biblical principles to difficult situations or just doing real life stories. So we'll have these sprinkled out over the next couple seasons, but we are excited to kick this off. So today we are interviewing Sam Greer. Sam, I saw you accomplish something incredible. You had to have the Lord's strength, grit, tenacity to accomplish what you accomplished, with the Lord's help, of course. So for some of our listeners, it might be encouraging to hear how you got out of debt. For some, it might be encouraging to hear how you juggled multiple jobs, and I know we could all be encouraged by how you shepherded your wife and family through this season, with joy. And I mean, this season was nuts. We were there with you. We were doing church together, doing life together. So, anyways, I'll have you take it away, Sam. But just to kind of big picture here to our listeners, this is not just a story about paying off debt, but taking care of your family in a difficult season. And so I know those points will be kind of highlighted as we have this conversation. But anyway, Sam, it is so good to see you. We're doing this through Zoom, so I get to see your face here, and it is just wonderful to see you, brother.
It's good to see you. And whenever well, first off, yes, we were doing life together at Grace Community Church at the same home Bible study. And before the cruel mistress of Florida stole you away, no forgiveness for the Sunshine State there. When you do podcast voice at your intro, which, by the way, great job. It's like, it's concise, it's complete, it's authentic, it's genuine. But whenever I hear an intro voice, I can't not hear the blaring saxophone of Dave Ramsey's podcast intro. So whenever someone says, welcome to, I hear like, welcome to the Dave Ramsey show where cash is king. So when we were serving together for a few years there. So my wife and I came to Grace Community in 2017, and we can measure it by when we had our daughter, Maggie, because Nikki was on staff at another church, wonderful church here in town. And like, we knew that once we had our first kid, we didn't want her to still have to be working. So when we had our first kid, we thought, okay, we really actually get the chance to pick where we want to go to church for the next 20, 30 years, because before we were happy there, we were on staff, or she was on staff, I was happily serving. But then we were like, oh man, if we're picking fresh, like the children's ministry at Grace Community is legendary, obviously catching like Pastor John's that season of ministry, which we thought it was going to be like a handful of years, and now it looks like it's going to be a couple handfuls more, Lord willing. So we made that jump, and then it was a blessing getting connected with you and just serving together at Paul's Bible study. I think that's a fun place to start is our origin story, because I knew you a bit from because we knew Lizzie first, then we met you, and then we got reconnected at Grace Community. And so my first couple of years at Grace Community, like I guess I saw you through a couple of very distinct periods. I saw you caring for Lizzie at the end, and then I saw you serving God as a single man, and then we were privileged to see new love blossom with Mel. I considered I had never reflected on that before, but I'm just realizing what a privilege it was to be friends with you during those distinct seasons. And now, fresh journeys as a business owner. And of course, I've served with Melissa for like worship ministry. So yeah, we love y'all well. We know y'all well. We wish y'all were in California and we were raising kids together. But it's nice to reconnect now. You never know what the Lord will do next. I'm just wow. Now I'm just sitting and reflecting. You could take back over if you want, because I'm just enjoying myself.
No, it you're gonna make me tear up over here because those were sweet memories. I'm just reflecting on, when we do you remember when we first met?
At an In-N-Out
In and
here
out.
in Santa Clarita,
In and out. Yep,
which
that's
makes you
right.
feel like a teenager. Like that
Yeah.
sounds like, oh man. So I assume you guys met after a high school football game at age like 17, but it's like, nah, it was like post college already, or maybe mid college.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, no, the thing that struck me, Sam, with you at that In and Out was, wow, what a joyful couple. And you were not married yet. You and Nikki had not been married yet.
Yep, we were just
Um,
dating.
that's right. Yeah. So even in that season, I know you were working a ton, yet you had so much joy. And then you've just been marked by joy in every season after that. So it's been an encouragement to be your friend and just to be reminded of joy when I see you and Nikki. I mean, both y'all are just joyful.
That's sweet. And I'll cut in and say that was one of the first things that I noticed about her. You thought I was going to turn around and make it about you. I noticed how joyful you were at that In-N-Out, but no, she like when we first met. One of the first times we really connected was at a bonfire. I was at the Masters University, the Masters College at the time. It's where a lot of people meet their spouses. Great place to go to school if you're a Christian young person who's willing to go out and suffer at in beautiful Southern California for 4 years. So we met, and I just remember being floored by her joy and her sweetness and her like empathy. She's very much like sensitive to what everyone around her is feeling, which I think as guys we tend to be bulls in a china shop, but especially guys who are wired to be more of the driver type, like a driver or an expressive, rather than someone who's a little more amiable or analytical and like taking stuff in, someone who's just like getting stuff done. So I noticed that I really liked how she was so caring for everyone around her. That's just a connecting point. That's sweet. Thanks for saying that I've been joyful throughout a bunch of seasons. That was one of the reasons that I was attracted to her in the first place too.
Yeah, yeah, you guys are just we love you guys. I know you know that, but I'm gonna say it in the public space just so you know. Well, so speaking of kind of origin stories there, so you obviously you got married knowing that you had some debt, and so maybe kind of start us there, Sam. What were conversations like there? Because I'm thinking of young people, who are single and thinking about marriage, and kind of walk us through that season.
The first big thing I'd say would be it really was monopoly money at that phase. You know what I mean? Like it was a factor, and I was getting green lights left and right towards the end of college when I was starting to actually think about that. I was getting green lights from friends and family about like, oh my goodness, Nikki is absolutely an amazing gal and you should marry her. Like that was unanimous. And she basically paid her own way through college, like working. She was only on campus living that idyllic, stereotypical college life for about a semester. And then after that, she was like off campus, would end up, living with different families in the communities, working multiple jobs to hack it. And the long and the short of it was, and I feel like the dollar amounts are useful here, she racked up about 60 grand in debt by the end. And that was with working like crazy to not rack up more. Because again, she didn't have a bunch of help coming in. So that's half the debt. The other half came from me because I picked up a master's degree and I am glad I went to Claremont Graduate University. So, long story short, I went there based on recommendations and I'm glad I did, but I racked up another 60 grand of debt of my own. Because again, it was a great school. It still is, but like I was racking up debt. And by the time Nikki and I finished, we landed at around 127K. And so that's when it stopped feeling like monopoly money because, you get a certain amount of time after you're done with any kind of school, and then you start making the minimums, and you don't really pay attention to them because you just think, it's a bill, it's another little bill. We were both working at the time. I was teaching high school history at a local private Christian school while I was getting my master's degree. And then I started as an adjunct professor at the master's university. So I was always on at least two tracks back then. But she was also pulling in an income at a wonderful local church, Crossroads Community Church in Santa Clarita. So we had two incomes. We were making the minimums, and we didn't really wake up until, like, I don't remember who got in our ear about interest, but someone got in our ear, and we got spooked because we ran some very, like, just simple back of the envelope math, and we figured out, oh my goodness, we need to pay this down, otherwise the interest is going to gobble us up. That's when we got serious-ish. And I won't make this just a full Dave Ramsey commercial, because there's actual biblical principles that underlie these things. But for a couple years, we did Dave Ramsey-ish, meaning, like, you try to save, you try to budget, and you probably budget like 60% well. I'm very sorry, but it's time for an interruption. This is
Hi, Nikki.
Hi there. I'm so sorry. I just need to get.
Hi.
Hi, Caleb.
Get whatever you need. Welcome to the show. We're gonna leave this part in because we miss you guys.
We miss you too. Hi.
my sweet wife. Okay, she was walking by. I couldn't let her not say hi. So Dave Ramsey's big phrase is, you don't want to get to the end of the month wondering where your money went instead of having told it where to go. So we were still doing a good amount of that. So it's like by the end of 2 years of actually really being intense about it, we saw enough progress that we just got more intense and more intense. And it really was a simple matter of budgeting, having a plan at the beginning of the month, and then, executing on that plan throughout the month. And then if you spend over in one category, then that means you do spend less on a different category. And again, with two incomes or two and a half, depending, there was some wiggle room. But just by actually having a plan, we were making enough progress. And then we had a kid, and our intensity only increased because we thought we've come this far, why not? And the long and the short of it was, we had, depending on how you count it, like 2.5 kids. I'm trying to think of if you count pregnancies or not. No, I guess that would be 2 kids and one in the oven, 3 kids, but one is located inside of a mama. Like we finished paying down our debt, living in, like, we started in a studio apartment, like a single box, which we were privileged to live in. We were happy to live there. And then we went to, like, another apartment where, when the baby was a little tiny baby, she was, like, in the closet next to us, like in a little bassinet, because we didn't have another bedroom, and we were still right there. We could hear if there was something going on, but, like, it was a little sad to not have a bedroom. The next kid we had was promoted to the closet, and then our other daughter was promoted to, by then we were at, like, a 1-bedroom. So we were always at least a bedroom behind, but it was part of what it took. And that's where I'll praise Nikki again. Couldn't have done it without her, because she was managing the home throughout this whole time. Again, after we had one kid, she wasn't working anymore. So because she was the manager of the home, and there's biblical precedent for that, by the way, who knows if we'll get to it, but there's, like, biblical precedent for, like, the actual word manager is used in the New Testament of, like, wives should be managers at home. Like, yeah, anywho, because she was doing a lot of the, like, shopping for the family, she would do the dragging and dropping on the app. So I really trusted her. I learned to rely on her, and I learned to let her manage the home and not just by default be like, I don't know if we should put our shoes right outside the door. What if we should put them inside the door? Like, I really did trust her in those little things, and then also trust her in the big things. And the net result was, we went out to Ramsey Studios in Nashville after 5 years and some change, and we did our debt-free Scream, which, ingenious the way he and whoever helped develop that system came up with it, it really gives you a feeling of closure to do, like, a mini ceremony. And I think that's true of a lot of ceremonies. The ceremony itself isn't substantial inherently, but what it means and what everyone agrees that it means makes it substantial. but just whether it be graduations, whether it be weddings, ceremonies can really be meaningful, and they can really cement in something that already happened and isn't happening in the ceremony. So, anywho, we graduated from our debt after about 5 years of actually working on it. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I was going to ask how long was that period? So 5 years. I want to go back a little bit. You know, we would come over and hang out with you guys, and you were in a was it a 1 or 2 bedroom in Newhall there on the corner?
Which one? There were a couple.
That corner unit right by down the street from Ho New Coffee.
Okay, yes. Short answer is that was a 1 bedroom.
Okay. So 1 bedroom, and you had at that time, how many kids? You had 2 girls?
By that time we were up to 2.
2, yeah. And you're still alive. Evidently you didn't need a 4 bedroom, 4 bath and a Rolls Royce out front.
Yep, the Lord was kind. We did have to scrimp and save, but the Lord was kind. This is where I'll re-hijack real quick, because I think that was teeing me up. Well, I'll take it as teeing me up. When I taught a Bible study a couple months ago, I taught on wealth and poverty in the book of Proverbs. And what I found was 2 really clear clusters of association. How to get wealth in the book of Proverbs is through righteousness, diligence, and generosity. And how to get poverty in the book of Proverbs is by wickedness, stinginess, and laziness. It's shocking how moral they are. We live in a world where there's just, without having to go into great detail or even make it political, there's great incentive for class warfare. Like politicians are incentivized around stoking class warfare, because whatever their little angle is, it's going to be how they're going to help, make the rich pay their fair share or what have you. It's everywhere. Resentment against the wealthy. And in Proverbs, it's almost nowhere, except for when the wealthy, are exploiting the poor. But in Proverbs, it's mostly, if you are righteous and if you are diligent and if you are generous, so all moral positives, wealth follows. And if you're wicked and if you're stingy and if you're lazy, poverty follows. And wealth tends to bring protection, and poverty tends to bring vulnerability. And those are the general rules. It's worth letting it sit for a second because it's uncomfortable and you want to jump in with the exceptions. The exceptions are there. Like, wealth isn't always moral. It has limitations, and poverty isn't always immoral. People can become impoverished through not their own actions. But in the preponderance of verses, at least in wisdom literature, there's 2 clear clusters of association. And the one you want to be on, the way you get there, is righteousness, generosity, and diligence. So those were emphases for us, because it's obviously just biblical. Like, I'm not reinventing the wheel. That's old news. But during that time, like, we did grind pretty hard. You can't just think of yourself, if you're in Southern California, you can't just think like, oh man, it's hard to make it as a single income family. Things were easier in the 50s or whenever you decide things were easier, quote unquote. There's in Ecclesiastes, it says, do not ask why were the former days better than these, for it is not from wisdom that you ask. So like, we didn't go down that road of, oh my goodness, like, why is it so hard to hack it? We just worked hard. We just worked hard to hack it, with the caveats that, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain that build it, and that it's really his blessing your effort that causes it to yield fruit. That's the same thing, but it's worth saying.
Yeah. And I know that you found your joy was not connected with things, with cars or big houses and stuff. It was God's word that brought you joy. It was fellowship that brought you joy. It was church that brought you joy. It was your family, your bride and your kiddos. So you always had your focus on the right thing. And I think that's important to think through, because look, we're all millennials here, and well, there's multiple generations. But speaking to the millennial for a second, I just want to highlight that you look, we don't need all this stuff. Entitlement comes to mind. Like if you had been entitled, oh no, I need a separate room for every kid. I need, a huge kitchen, to be hospitable. I need a pool in the backyard to be able to be more hospitable and a bigger house to be hospitable. And it's like, no, no, that we're not entitled to that. And hospitality doesn't end at the house. Like you could be hospitable outside of the house. So yeah, I think you were a good example in that, by not needing all this stuff, but you were still like serving church and Bible study and just I know you ministered to me in my heart just by our morning coffee times and stuff. So yeah, you don't need all this stuff. It's really perspective. It's really perspective, and you guys were a good example of that.
That's sweet. I have little to add there. It's like in Proverbs makes wealth not the be all and end all, but Proverbs is pretty like a rich man's wealth is a strong city. The poverty of the poor is their ruin. If you're poor, your friends go far from you. You call after them and they don't come. But that doesn't mean that wealth is the be all and end all, because it also says the stingy man is the one who hastens after wealth, but does not know that poverty will come upon him. But the plans of the diligent surely lead to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. So yeah, I totally agree. If you're scratching out, trying to get ahead, and like to get ahead for the sake of getting ahead and for the sake of being a little less vulnerable, and if you're not trusting God, you're missing the target. And you don't need like an arbitrary measurement of wealth to be faithful. I think that's like one of the amazing things that the Grace Community Church world drums home is just how critical it is to be faithful, and how to make that your priority is the way. You keep going, because this is encouraging and I want to hear more from you.
Faithful. That is such an important word and an important concept to get in your heart. So speaking of faithfulness, how did you shepherd your wife through this season of, we'll say, really tight living, and yet you were still able to, be involved with church and being an incredible husband, incredible dad? What was on your heart and mind?
Gratefulness, because she wasn't one who would complain. That's a big answer. So shepherding her had to do with, I mean, yeah, we did have to, I mean, to be honest, we reminded each other to scrimp and save and like stick to a budget. So because we were both aligned with, hey, we've found a plan, we're going to trust the system, and it would be hard in moments. But whenever it was hard in moments, it wasn't like me having to shepherd her and keep her on track and fix her. It was more like it was hard at both of us at about the same times every time. So we would remind each other of the scriptural truths that undergirded the plan that we were sticking to. And inevitably, two are better than one. For when one falls, the other will pick them up. And it wasn't like one of us would accidentally go on a shopping spree and just be, like splayed out with mall shopping bags, like Apple product or what have you, in the kitchen after like a shopping bender. It wasn't like that. It was like when one of us would fall in terms of feeling discouraged, the other would help. So yeah, thanks for asking. And the honest answer is it was a team effort. Like I would lead her, but she was easy to lead and she would encourage me, and she would never, because we are aligned in values. Like that was why I was attracted to her in the first place. That was why it was green light after green light after green light for when I was getting counsel leading up to marrying her, because we were blessed to have married well. Because we were blessed to have married well, we were in alignment about having a plan that's aligned with the Bible that we were both following. So thanks for asking. That's the answer. That's how I shepherded her. We were both on the same page. So we we just encouraged each other to stick to the plan.
That's encouraging. And I might even go off on a tiny rabbit trail here and speak to the young men, or just men in our audience here. Find a wife who's not a complainer. If you're looking, then find a wife who's not a complainer, amongst many things. Obviously, a God fearing woman, but my wife's the same way. Sam, I mean, Mel, her joy is never tied to her circumstances. I wish I could say the same about myself, but I can't. So yeah.
That's funny. I'm the one of the two of us, Nikki and I. Between Nikki and I'm the one who, when the circumstances do get hard, I'll still have biblical joy, or I strive to, but the day to day like instinct to joke might get diminished. Like I might get a little bit beaten down and bedraggled, and she is less so. Like she's resilient and is still making me laugh and not bedraggled, even if circumstances are hard. So I agree, Caleb. Marry well. Marry someone who's not a complainer. Who, yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of. I mean, that's a whole nother episode. How to select a wife.
Exactly. Yep. So Sam, talk about your job situation. I know as men, we can often just want to put a 40-hour a week of work in, and be able to just sit on the couch and watch TV or whatever, or just spend time with family, which is wholesome. But we want a lot of money and with very few hours of work, and that happens to about two guys in America. And then we think we can do the same thing. And here's the word: we think we're entitled to that. So take a big sledgehammer and just smash that way of thinking to pieces. Yeah, talk to us about it, Sam.
Poor is he who works with a negligent hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a son who acts wisely, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who acts shamefully. Now, this is one like, oh man, my instinct is the opposite of sledgehammer because, people pleasing is like a sin that probably a lot of us struggle with. But with this one, I can break. Yeah, with this one, I can break it to us. Work backwards from your goals and make your goals based on the Bible. So that's the answer. And trust me, hard work will come because if you base your goals on the Bible, I mean, I can use like basic biblical categories of, you're to be a leader, a protector of the family, like you're to be a provider, but that doesn't tell the whole picture. It's like when you tie it to actual scriptures that have to do with whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits will have plenty of poverty. Like it really is a stark why in the road. There's not really a middle ground in scripture. And biblically, he who does not provide for his own is worse than an unbeliever. That's New Testament. So you've got Old Testament precedent, New Testament precedent for providing. And so whatever those goals need to look like in your individual situation, work backwards from them and do what it takes. And then that's where each individual situation gets really varied because everyone's going to be in a different, whether you're living in Alaska versus California versus Tennessee versus Montana, like those are all, different cost of living states. I think I may have accidentally just picked a bunch that have high cost of living. I couldn't think of a low cost of living state. Your goals will be pretty similar for most men based on the Bible. Some men have stretch goals and God calls them to extra, and that's great. But the baseline goals are going to be pretty similar, and those ones are going to be challenging enough. So, like, my individual story will be moderately helpful, maybe, but I won't dwell on it forever. It's like out of college, during college, I had the vision for marrying, and I was like, I knew Nikki was the one the first time I met her, and we both were on the 5-year track to college. And through many twists and turns, through many dangerous toils and snares, we eventually, I like our last year of college. That's when we officially started dating, and we got engaged. I was a server at Red Lobster, and I had no prospects for anything more, and I had graduated. but that's not nothing. I felt God saying it's time to propose. So I proposed. And then, like 2 weeks after that, I got the offer to teach full time at a local private Christian school, teach full time high school history. So it was like a small leap of faith. And I didn't like wait till the finances were perfect because, I mean, that's a whole nother thing when to get engaged. But for now, I'll just say that was job one, was serving in, two restaurants at once. I did that for my last little chunk of college. Then job two was teaching high school history for a couple of years while picking up my master's degree in the meantime. And what I had already done was during college, I had built up teaching experience through working with a local like homeschool co-op. And I got to know the leadership there and was just tapped as a resource regularly to teach the kids. And I got paid a small amount, but that was the teaching experience that put me on the map in the mind of the decision maker at Santa Clarita Christian at the time. And so it was like faithfulness during college to get teaching experience because I knew I wanted to teach. And then right after college, that's what landed me that. And then working on the master's degree on the back burner, the opportunity was opened up for me too, because I had been a tutor at the master's college for English students, like students who were needing help with like English composition, just writing essays. So that ended up being enough of a connection for me and the department chair that, I was faithful in little. It says in scripture, he who was faithful in little will be made master over much. So I was faithful in little. I think that's actually in the original context spiritual, but here I think the principle does apply to the more horizontal. And the horizontal and the vertical are connected. We know that. So yeah, it ended up being the seeds that I was planting in college came to fruition right after college. So that's how I landed the job as an adjunct professor. And then the rest is history that's still being written. I mean, and you only see in hindsight what the Lord was preparing you for. You just pray you are faithful the whole time. But like after that fact, I started building a career in marketing. And I mean, part of that wasn't glamorous too. A friend hired me, but the company was in Pasadena. And I would drive an hour to work and an hour home from work. And then that company happened to be kind and generous and actually let work around my class schedule for my master's degree. So I would be sometimes driving, to work early and then home from work at, 11 p.m., flying down the 210 with the truckers, not flying, but like that was a whole nother season. And I won't give like a resume. So I'll tell the part where it gets colorful. Cause again, ever since then, it's been mostly like the core of my day is mostly marketing. That's been 6+ years now with teaching mostly online as an adjunct professor for English. But the fun and colorful part is the privilege to become a Babylon Bee contributor. That one's just fun.
How do you make that connection?
I mean, how'd you get involved with the Babylon?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. How'd you get involved with the Bee is a fun question. Reagan Rose helped. So what happened was the Bee was just one of the few sites that I would like open, like that I would go to and look at. Like that's some of the highest praise I can give in the attention economy, that you make me come to you. Like that's crazy. So I reached out to the editor in chief because he was a master's guy. Like he had gone to master's for a couple of years, and I had listened to enough of the podcast to catch on like, oh, wow. Like the jokes are so funny because the leadership is based in truth. Like, jokes rhyme with the truth. Jokes work because they trigger a recognition of what's true. That's a whole nother thing. Okay, point being, I reached out to Kyle and just said, hey, I'm an English professor out here at the Masters University where I know you've got some connections. We've got some shared connections. I'd love to contribute for y'all if y'all are ever interested. And he was kind enough to countenance a meeting. It took, campaigning, like talk about a busy man. That's a man who's like a hard driver. I mean, he's the creative decision maker. Okay, so point being, I had reached out to Kyle and through a series of meetings and then a series of like, trials, I'll call them, like me sending examples. I ended up being able to get involved. And that's been the privilege of a lifetime. And I still have a foot in that world, and it's a blessing. So that's where, okay, I'll wrap up and I'll get back to where you started. Where you started was, how did like drop the hammer on us? How hard do you have to work? And the answer is depends on your goals. But your baseline goals you don't have a choice in if you're a born again Christian. If you're forgiven, you're striving to live obediently to Christ, you have some built-in goals. You have some prerequisites. You have to ante. And the ante itself, just by virtue of us living in a fallen world, you have to bring forth produce from the ground by the sweat of your brow, and there's thorns and thistles. The ante itself is going to stretch you to the limit, but it's what God calls you to.
Encouraging just listening to you. And some takeaways for me are you didn't waste time. You went out and you handled it. And, you networked, you talked to people, you did whatever it took to provide for your family. And another highlight is everyday faithfulness. Mel and I use that word all the time. It's to us, it means just the mundane faithfulness of every day that is not extraordinary, but the Lord uses that really for extraordinary things. So it's encouraging to hear all this, and I know you've been an encouragement in my heart to just keep going, keep going, keep going.
That's sweet, and I bet you're sometimes rueful that part of your goals that you've worked backwards from is. I'm glad that part of your goals is having to be a business owner, because everyday faithfulness there, I can't imagine the whirlwind, where you're just like so much of your day is you're caught up in a whirlwind and you can't not be reactive, because by definition you're the one who has to react when the unexpected happens. Like, whoo, I admire that.
So I never get to stop. So
do you know what? Do not grow weary in the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. That's from the end of 1 Corinthians, and it's the theme verse for the Steadfast Fellowship Group at Grace Community Church.
amazing. Yeah, and you know what? We're kind of hitting on something here too. Why are we working? Are we working for a paycheck? Yeah. Are we working for to provide for a family and take care of them? Absolutely. But look, our life is ministry. Like that's are we connecting with people, or are we working as unto the Lord? Because we have an audience of one. He sees what we're doing, and so that's why we work for the Lord and for ministry. So, and then we just happen to be, electricians and writers and
marketers and the rest. Whatever you do, do it heartily, as unto the Lord, as not as unto men. You said it. I mean, that's a tight theology of work. There's more, because it's also work was not cursed, or work existed before the curse, which means it's not an accident or a bug, it's a feature. I believe that means it'll have a place in the millennial kingdom. I don't want to step out of my lane. I'm not a full-blown theologian. So for now, I guess I'll just say the tight theology of work is unto the Lord, not as unto men. At least you know who your real boss is. And you know what? It says that in Romans, in the passage about Christian liberties. And it's a flyover verse that you won't notice if you're doing what we normally do with the two big Christian liberties passages, which is like use them as a proof text and verify if we're doing Christian liberties right, which is fair. But there's a verse that's like a flyover verse that you might not notice that says, do not get in between another believer and God, for it is to his own boss that he reports. Totally paraphrasing, but that passage says each believer reports to God.
Romans 14 there, I think it is.
Exactly, Caleb. Romans 14. I had to pull up the verse here. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand. Now, that's an encouraging note to perhaps end on. I've got more time, but if we're wrapping up, we're wrapping up. Before the Lord is where you're to be faithful in your work. So I'm always cognizant to not prescribe Sam things onto everyone, because it just looks different for everyone, and it's before the Lord that you stand or fall. If listeners take anything away from this, take away take home, what you can take with you is the scriptures I mentioned, but they'll apply in a distinct way to your situation. I'm certain of it. So just be faithful before your own master, which is God, not me, which is good because I need rebalancing all the time because I'm not, I'm not a perfect master of myself. I need sanctification. You need sanctification all the time. And you also just need like wisdom. That's where wives come in handy, because if you learn to listen to your wife, you're setting yourself up for a world of much more success. And I mean success in every way. I mean spiritual and relationship success, not just money.
He who finds a wife finds a good thing
and obtains favor from the Lord. Proverbs 18:22.
Yeah. Amen. Well, just before we wrap up here, wow, Sam. Okay, so super busy with work, taking care of your family, got wife, kids.
And let me pause you there. I don't like the word busy. And what I mean is, it's the right word, but it just sounds so excusey, because it's like, yeah, well, like everyone's busy, but you prioritize, So everyone's busy. It always makes me sad if someone's like, well, I know you're busy. Get back to me when you can. I'm like, no, you're important to me. The Lord's put you in front of me at this moment. That's one of my frequent prayers is, Lord, help me to not view any needs or people that come across my path today as interruptions, but as opportunities for ministry. So thanks for saying that, because it's sweet. And obviously it is true that, busy. But there's this incredible book on leadership. It's about like biblical leadership. I'll name drop the title if I could pull it up quick enough, but it talks about how, spiritual leadership by J. Oswald Sanders. So he just says being organized is not optional, is a prerequisite for being a biblical leader. So thanks. Yes, it's busy. Yes, it's a grind. Yes, I get up early, but I'm not eating the bread of anxious toil. It still says in the Psalms, the Lord gives his beloved sleep. Why is it that you rise up early, eating the bread of anxious toil? So it's like you still trust God, and you don't just grind till you die. But you are busied up, but you're also organized. That's scattered, but it's less scattered in the book. J. Oswald Sanders, Spiritual Leadership. I'm plugging it. I'm promoting it.
Oh, I would too. I've read that book multiple times.
Grandpa Reagan Shiwi we're going through it in the Steadfast Fair Oaks Bible Study Leadership Group. He assigned it.
Oh, so good. Yeah, no, it's really good. So anyways, before you interrupted me there, I was saying that in your not busyness of life, but in your full life, Sam, you probably did not have time for church, right?
Oh my goodness, that's so important. I'll just answer this succinctly.
And I hope our audience knows that I'm being extremely facetious here.
They do.
Because we served together, if I can use the word, tirelessly, and loved every minute of it. But so I want to end on this note, talk about church life and how did you, I want to use the word prioritize, but I was going to say that word for you to use. But, it seemed like you prioritized the right stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'll start with like the actual functions that I fulfill and have fulfilled, and then I'll give the principle. So the functions, I think it's helpful because it's color commentary. So I'm the music coordinator for Steadfast, and that really is just scheduling the worship leaders. They select their own songs and their own supporting musicians, but overseeing the scheduling, it's a way to serve that doesn't have to be like I'm physically located somewhere away from the family 3 nights a week. You know what I mean? Like that one's nice because when you have a lot of small children, you do have to be strategic in where you serve. So that's one of the places I serve. I've overseen the kids ministry for a home Bible study that was so big. It was like a small church. That was in the Paul Twist days. And then I've been involved with kids ministry a lot. That was even at prior churches and whatnot. And then I've done counseling off and on, and I've been part of men's groups off and on. You really do have to hold these things with an open hand and recognize that whatever your core responsibilities are, like when I tacked on like multiple jobs, like it was when I tacked on like, 2.5 jobs that I had to drop some recurring commitments. And unfortunately, those were some of the ones that had to go. And it was painful because ministry is joyful, but I was always conscious to still be in ministry in a way that's like a stretch, It's like the New Testament scripture, give hilariously, like don't give till it hurts, give till it tickles. That's the little kid version. I've been listening to a lot of Steve Green because my kids listen to a lot of Steve Green, and that's what he says. And it's a decent enough paraphrase. Like God loves a cheerful giver. That's what I'm alluding to. So I think it's also true in serving. God loves a cheerful server at Red Lobster. No, God loves a cheerful servant at the church. So this one.
Which I'm going to pause there just real quick second, Sam, because I think it's important to highlight the fact that you said that. Look, when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and maybe I'll even paraphrase that another way and say you need to say no to something else if you bring something on, because what happens is you keep saying yes to ministry, and guess who you keep saying no to then? Your family, your wife time, your kids timed. And so that is now getting, simply put, outside of the biblical husband father. So anyways, I'll let you continue, but I just want to highlight that because I think that's important.
And that's where I'll just again praise my wife in the streets. She is on board with our family commitment that church is a priority. And again, that can look different for different folks. That was actually something that Paul Twist did drum into all of us a lot, which was that showing up opens the door to ministry. So if you're just faithful, then you have opportunities to serve others. And it won't always be in recognized ways, but you'll have the opportunities, and then it's on you to take them and then to have a right heart about them. I remember one of the first things that I was asked to do, and this was so sweet, was that Paul asked me to organize a retreat. And Nikki was massively helpful with that. And again, it was a big Bible study, but that was a sweet affirmation of, like the relationship serving has been of value. And that opened up other opportunities to serve more, which has just been a blessing. So yeah, I would say that's where also be aligned with the spouse, but also lead courageously, know what the amount of serving in the church is right for the family. Be sensitive to your wife if she's starting to say it's too much, and look for areas to trim or areas outside of church to trim if you're doing what the Lord's faithful to do. I totally agree with you. If you're taking something on, be prepared to drop something else or change something else, because the default thing that'll get squeezed out, sadly, is probably family. Thank you so much, Caleb. That's a good observation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and even I'm gonna continue that thought a little more. It's not dropping something. It's giving it to someone else. And so, like, that is my tendency. Like, I want to say yes to everything. What it's doing is, it's one, I'm not doing everything well. And two, I'm not giving another brother or sister, depending on what it is, the opportunity to serve. And so we need to correct our way of like American thinking, American church thinking, where we can just, do everything. Newsflash, we are not God. We cannot do everything. So the Lord's given us brothers and sisters around us, who can share burdens with us. So I think that's a note as well to offer up. Well, Sam, thank you. This has been such an incredible time. This has been a story of faithfulness and hard work. And I've seen you take care of your family so well, the church so well. You strive not for perfection, but for excellence. It's been seen and encouraged my heart. So, dude, I love you, man, and it's been great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Caleb, so much. This has been a massive blessing. I love you, brother. Thank you so much.